Welcome in, everybody, to Inside the Burrow. After a brief, I guess you could say, pause, we are back. FAU football season is started. The training camp season is here. Opening day, August 30th, will be here faster than you know it. So we're here to talk everything you need to know before Zach Kitley and company ship up to Maryland in a short amount of time, August 30th. Welcome into Inside the Burrow. I'm your host, Robbie Listella, alongside our co-host, Kevin Fielder. Welcome back, Kevin. Kevin, how's it going?
So now that there's football to talk about, and I don't have to pretend like, I like talking about every single position battle for 30 minutes without any substance behind it, I'm excited. I'm excited to talk about actual football, even if it is in shields and shorts, but I'm excited for that in and of itself.
I am excited for it all. Give it to me. Even the fact that it's just something new. I mean, obviously, even if we were heading into year 3 of Tom Herman era right now, I feel like it'd be a little less dull. But now we got year 1 of the Zach Kitley era. There's a lot to look forward to. Year 1 of the Brad Dewhurst era on the defensive side of the ball. There's a whole bunch of stuff to watch out for during camp. But let's dive right into it. They've been off and running here for the past week. Obviously, we're limited into what we can see too much. So there's not going to be there. We're not going to get to see exactly the entire offense step by step, but there's still some things to keep an eye out for. Starting off for me, at least, something that I want to kind of see outside here during this beginning of fall camp type of. I want to see Caden Veltkamp develop connections with guys outside of Easton Messer. We all know the connection is going to be there with Easton. They're best friends. But I feel like over these next couple of weeks, it's a time for guys like J.R. Wilson, Quincy Brown, Asad Wasim, some of the tight ends, whether it's Mike Kirch, who put up career numbers at his last stop, I believe it was D2. But nevertheless, he's all over the record books there. So he's a guy who can be trustworthy over the middle. Reed McKeska as well. So I want to see some of these other guys start to develop a rapport with Caden, and I think this is the exact time to do it. What do you think, Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing is to realize that once the season starts, Easton Messer won't be open on every play. And if he is open on every play, ship it, we're going to the national championship. Very unlikely that he will be open on every play. And so to some degree, there's going to come a time where someone else has to step up. And we can go down the list of about 90 different names, it feels like, because there's so much uncertainty in the wide receiver and the tight end room that we don't know who's going to step up. We don't know who's going to look good in, a couple months' time, or even in 28 days at the time that we're recording this, but someone else has to step up, and preferably, right, like it'd be more than one guy. But I think the biggest issue last year was at times they didn't have anyone step up. At times they only had one guy step up, and you could tell the offense struggled when that guy wasn't open and they were sort of relying on, the hopes and prayers of a dream effectively. And so they need someone else to step up. And there's plenty of guys who can do it, but the biggest thing is, talent only really looks good on paper. There comes a point where that talent has to showcase itself on the field, and we'll see what that looks like. But I do agree, right? These first few practices are going to be the most important to seeing who is ready to take that next step as a wide receiver, as a tight end, as a pass catcher for Caden Veltkamp.
100%. I think last year something that bugged me a little bit, and didn't bug Tom Herman, but I necessarily wasn't a fan of the rotating wide receivers. He was never going to set a depth chart. We asked him week after week. He was like, we like rotating, and that's fine. There was a lot of talent in that room last year, sure, but it was never able to gel. As you mentioned, there was no go-to guy. At times it was Omari Hayes, but at times he would play less, like the 5th most snaps out of the wide receiver room. So it made no sense. I don't think that's going to be the case at all with Zach Kitley. I think he's going to define the depth chart for sure, which makes it interesting because I named Quincy Brown, J.R. Wilson, Asad Wasim, but there's guys as well. I mean, you got Joe Young, you've got Jay-Sean Platt, who's been here forever. Last year, he was a redshirted. Tom Herman mentioned that he decided it was time for him to build on some skills that he never really did. He never redshirted. He was always playing special teams. So he's back. He didn't transfer. That's another guy who's just lingering here in this wide receiver room that in a Kitley offense, he's got a chance to break through. So at wide receiver, there is endless potential, and I think during camp and early on in the season as well, I think there'll be opportunities for guys to kind of shine. There's 2 freshmen as well, Jade Card, Mike Calcalix. I'm still not 100% certain on how.
I wouldn't put any certainty in any of the freshmen being something this year.
Oh, yeah, I don't think they're going to be starters, but I'm curious to see if they're redshirters or if there's any type of role because they are big guys. We have tall receivers on the outside, J.R. Wilson, Quincy Brown, so we don't really have a role for them right away, but I'll be interested to see in certain types of red zone packages and whatnot if both of those guys who are 6'4 plus have find their way onto the field. But in terms of other offensive things, I think one thing I like is the fact that in our running back room, it's kind of been the quiet position for this offense. Obviously, we brought in Caden. We brought in a ton of wide receivers. The offensive line got overhauled. But running backs, not really. We bring back Jamari Sands and we bring back Xavier Terrell, 2 guys who have been here now for a couple of years. They both started to break out last year. We saw Xavier had some big runs, Jamari as well. And I think those 2 are going to be able to play off of each other really well in this offense. Both are capable pass catchers, which we have seen in Zach Kitley's offense is important for running backs. And so I think having those 2 guys going into it and you kind of know like, all right, we know what we got here. And then you look behind him, a guy like Caden Shield Dutton, who has been here as well. He's a guy who the staff has been high on. He's a big physical running back, got some speed to his game as well. This should be his year to finally get some snaps as well. So the running back room, there's intrigue there. And I like the fact that it's not brand new. That'll kind of give the offense some stability as well.
I'm concerned about the running back room, and I'm concerned largely because it feels like you're one injury away from a disaster.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe some of that's planning, maybe some of that is that you didn't hit on the transfer portal targets you wanted at that position. But I look at this room and I feel comfortable with about 3 guys right now, and that's Terrell, Sands, and Shields Dutton. The freshman Irvin could be something, but again, similarly to the wide receivers, are we trusting a freshman do something, right? And like, I think the most important thing is you need to have a contingency plan in place, because we could sit here in early August and go, well, this room looks good. Injuries are bound to happen. Better hope they don't happen in the running back room, I think, at this point. And maybe Irving looks really good in camp. Maybe he steps up. Maybe he emerges as a true 4th option. But I think you need another guy to step up in that room, and not necessarily to be a starter, to be a guy who gets 10, 15 carries a game, to be a guy who, if you get an injury in the middle of a game, you are not zero dark 30ing this, hoping to God something happens, because it's sort of the opposite of the wide receiver room where you have so many cooks in that kitchen. Eventually one will probably emerge. You don't have that same luxury in the running back room right now. And so I think you are really, to some degree, just hoping injuries don't happen. And I think look, hindsight's going to be 2020 on this. And so in 6-7 months time, we'll know what this room looks like. But ideally, I think I would have liked them to add one more running back, at least one more guy that you felt comfortable with giving touches to. And look, if they think that's Irving, good. Like if they think it's a true freshman who, has the size to be a reliable running back, sign me up. But just always tough to rely on a true freshman to be something if, injuries happen. And they're bound to happen at some point.
We saw North Texas have to do that last year. Their running back depth wasn't great. They ended up having multiple walk-ons take carries, and they did well against FAU. So that's not always the worst thing in the world. You find a running back that way, but you don't want to get to that situation if you're FAU. I agree. I was a bit surprised when they didn't bring in any running backs, but also it's not the focal point of this offense, but at the same time, they needed depth. Which they didn't go out and get. So if there's an injury, we could see a scenario where a walk-on earns I'm obviously not a starting role, but a spot on the depth chart, maybe a wide receiver potentially takes snaps. So they could get grim, which is not good. So I'm interested to see how that kind of shakes out as well in terms of depth. Irvin played at a very big high school there in Georgia. I believe it's called Buford High, off the top of my head. And I've seen their facilities and whatnot. So he's coming from a respectable program now. Doesn't mean he's going to be ready to play right away, but We'll see. We'll definitely see. One position where they did bring in a lot of pieces and depth, which was if they didn't, it was going to be that would have been grim, was the offensive line. I really liked what they went out and did. On the right side of the line, obviously this isn't finalized. This is kind of my little bit of a guesstimate here, but obviously Daughtry Richardson returns at tackle. He comes in with a close friend of his, Kayshawn Sapp, who transferred in from SMU. They're close friends, so I have a feeling they're probably going to want to stay on the same side of the line, but potentially that could be Alex Akovich there on that right guard position as well. So that's up for debate. At center, there's definitely, during camp, that's something that's going to need to be finalized, is the center position. Vinny Fiacable comes over from Indiana. Didn't play too much last year at IU, but was a part of that run, comes from a good culture. That's something he said he wanted when he transferred here, and he said it's a similar kind of vibe in that locker room prior to when Indiana started last year. He says this is a similar kind of feeling, so that's intriguing. He could potentially win center. He's competing with Braden Cunningham, a redshirt freshman, so it'll be between those two. If I had to guess, it'd probably be Vinny, but we'll see. And then you bring back Scarlett Jean there at left tackle. He, along with Jakavian Nonar, probably battle it out. I see Jean kind of winning that, and then it'll be between either Akovich and Sapp there between the two guards. I'm not sure exactly which side of the line they'll end up on, but there's some depth there as well. They're behind them. You got Carson Osmus, who transferred here from Washington State. He's a potential on as a backup tackle. I'm blanking here, but overall, I do like the fact that they brought in some depth. They didn't lose too many. You lose Jordan Church, but you didn't. Obviously, Fed goes to the pros, but there wasn't any pieces that outside of Church that left where I was like, oh, this offensive line isn't going to be in a good position. And they went out and added. So I'm interested to see who kind of wins that center battle. But other than that, I feel like our offensive line is pretty stable, which that's never a guarantee at the G5 level. Now, obviously, we'll see how things work out. A lot of these guys, whether it's Vinny Fiacable, Kayshawn Sapp played here and there, but the experience level isn't that great. So we'll see how it shakes out once I hit the field. But I like the potential for sure.
I think bringing back Daughtry Richardson and Alex Akovich is probably the biggest win for Zach Kitley year one, because instead of having to go out and replace like 5 offensive linemen and being like, well, I really hope someone steps up, you have 2 guys who I feel comfortable in saying can be reliable guards and tackles in Conference USA. And that's the biggest thing, right? Is like, in this offense, you don't need offensive linemen who are elite. You just need offensive linemen who are serviceable and stable and don't allow pressure within 2, milliseconds. And so I'm not too concerned about this offensive line. Obviously, they're going to need other guys to step up. They're going to need to determine some of these battles, preferably fairly early, because chemistry is going to be the most important thing for an offensive line. But bringing back Richardson, bringing back Atkovich, bringing back established players from last year's team, that's important. And guys who know what it takes to win on an offensive line, that's going to be the most important thing. Now it's just figuring out the 3 or 2 spots around them. And there are plenty of guys who can do that. And so I'm not too concerned about this room.
No, I was a bit more concerned last year. And so, like you said, as long as they can hold up for a decent amount of time, I mean, we don't need them to build a house back there, but as long as they can do enough to give Caden some time for routes to develop, I'm excited. Obviously, losing Fed at center, a new center is never ideal, but it's between, from what it looks like, it's probably between Vinny Fiacable, a guy who was at Indiana, was around a good offensive line there, and Braden Cunningham, who was here last year as a freshman and worked with Fed. So I'm happy to see that there's some solid options there at center, and we'll see how it works out. But overall, offensively, big things to watch for in camp. Wide receivers who popped out outside of Messer, and how this offensive line ultimately shapes out. Those are going to be the 2 big things for me at camp. Obviously, we know what we're going to get in the running back position. We know Caden's going to be the guy at QB. But what other wide receivers can step up? And what obviously at the end of the day does the offensive line look like? Shifting over to the defensive side of the ball, new defensive coordinator Brett Dewhurst, who I think is going to it's not going to be easy in year one. You're replacing a lot on the defensive side of the ball, including your signal caller. But they went out and they got a lot of pieces as well. Some guys I'm high on that they brought in. Deshaun Batiste from Tulane could be a good pass rusher. CJ Doggett in the middle from Ohio has the potential to be a pass rusher and run stopper, which is huge. And I'm also interested to see potentially what Tyler Stolsky's able to do in that signal caller role. He had a good spring game for whatever that's worth. He did force a fumble. It was in the backfield, but that's just the spring game. But nevertheless, he brings he comes over from the Big Ten, Minnesota, so hard-nosed guy. He reminds me a lot of Alex Anzalone, who's not – he played – they just look similar. So to me, that's exciting. When I was growing up, Alex Anzalone was on the Gators. That was a team I watched a lot. And so seeing Tyler Stolsky, they look identical. I'm like, all right, this gives me something to look forward to. But that's just my opinion. And then at the defensive back side of things, that's going to be, to me, what makes or breaks this defense. There's a lot of solid pass rushers, and I'm excited to see what – that looks like on the field. We haven't had a ton of success rushing the passer in years past, but what it's going to come down to is how this secondary works out. Speaking of retention, you get a leader in that room back, Wendell Fullord, which there was no guarantee. He played I believe 4 years at Kaiser and then transferred here last year for his grad year, but he gets another year. Why not? And that's huge for this defense. You get a veteran leader. On the outside of DB, Duda Rogers, I'm interested to see if he can be as good. You want him to be better potentially, but Bugs Brown went to the NFL, so how much better can you be? But nevertheless, I want to see how Duda Rogers holds up on the outside. And then outside of that, who is going to win that other outside corner role? Potentially Lawrence Johnson. But that's something to watch, is who wins that other outside DB role. Assuming you have Wendell in the slot, assuming you have Duda on one side, who's going to be that other boundary outside corner? We'll see. Kevin, what's your thoughts on the defense? Anything you're looking for?
Yeah, to answer the first question as to who wins the cornerback 2 battle or the boundary cornerback battle, I think it's pretty telling when you go add a cornerback right before camp starts.
Yeah.
I think historically when you add a cornerback right before camp starts, it's not because you feel really good about that room or feel really good about having multiple guys ready. And so maybe it's not Demarius McGee, the Kansas transfer who transferred in, I think, like a day before camp started, it feels like. But I think it is normally telling when you add a guy right before camp starts, through the transfer portal, no less, because maybe you feel like you need some depth. Maybe it feels like you need a little bit more added reinforcements to that room. Just in general, this is a giant question mark for FAU this year because you have a first-time play caller in Brett Dewhurst. You have to some degree a brand new scheme. You have about 25 new players on defense, it feels like. There is no guarantee that any of this works out and you get a good American defense. There are so many realms of possibilities right now for this room that it's like you really hope a couple of these guys just, you really hope it all comes together and a couple of these guys really step up and play to the level that you think they can. But I was looking at their depth chart earlier, and I like to color code things when we look at transfers because when you have so many, right, it's a good example of it. And I saw so much color coding, it wasn't even funny. It was just every single position had about 3 guys. He was like, yep, new guy, new guy, new guy. It could definitely work out. And I'm excited to see what the 3-3-5 defense looks like in FAU because it's a defense I'm a fan of. But I do agree that the front 7 should be fine. You should have no issues with the front 7 as long as the pass rushing holds up, which has been an inherent issue since Leighton McCarthy with Lane Kiffin. It feels like we have not had an established pass rusher at FAU in 10 years, it feels like. And I know it hasn't really been 10 years, but it really sure feels like it. And I like the talent they have in that room. I like the players they have. I think I like the idea that they have about 4 or 5 guys who could step up and emerge and become reliable players. And I think you have about 3 guys who are probably ready to take that next step. The linebacker room, like you mentioned, Tyler Stolsky should be good. Got playing time at Minnesota, was never an established starter, but you're talking about a guy who got playing time at a Big Ten school. And that's hard to get if you're a group of 5 school. So I'm excited to see what that room looks like. And I think that room will continue to be a reliable room for FAU. Then on the back end, like you mentioned, man, outside of Wendell, there's a giant question mark. There's a giant. You probably need about 3 or 4 position battles to get figured out there. And I know that Dewhurst, I know that Zach Kitley won't say it. That might be a concern heading in later. And you need guys to start emerging now, because I don't know if you want to be 2 weeks before the season starts going, okay, well, we don't know who's starting at outside corner. We don't know who's starting at safety. We don't know who's starting at the jack safety sort of hybrid slot corner role. Like, man, good luck. Now, I will say, to sort of shift this towards, I guess, more positivity, there are guys I'm really excited about in that room. There are guys that I think can emerge as actual players. Antonio Robinson, the Wake Forest transfer, is a very athletic corner who might be ready to take that next step. Duda Rogers, like you mentioned, right? A Purdue transfer who has the makings of a solid player. I think Demarius McGee brings veteran leadership, brings stability into that room. And it's hard to find stability, especially late in the portal. And then I'll keep singing his name from the rooftops. Jaden Sweeney, the Liberty transfer. I think he's ready to take that next step. I think he's ready to be a reliable player. And in a defense that's going to rely so heavily on those defensive backs to do a lot of the stuff that most defenses rely or have their linebackers and their front seven do, there's talent there to put it all together and really emerge as a reliable defense, which might be all they really need depending on how good that offense is. But man, right now on August 2nd, I don't feel comfortable with about anyone in the secondary right now.
No, it's definitely something to keep an eye on here throughout camp. We'll obviously keep you updated. A guy who I have seen or out there on the social medias with Owl's Nest, he's been posted. Chris Tooley.
We're back.
I know. It's like it's not only this Chris Tooley, I feel like, has been here for a long time as well, but it's the second Chris Tooley here in FAU history. But nevertheless, it is similar to Jay Sean Platt. He's been here now. Established himself, and it's kind of now or never type of thing. So that's a guy on the outside as well, potentially could compete. Another guy who I like as well, Therese Reed, transferred in from UTSA, didn't get a ton of playing time, or UTEP, excuse me, but nevertheless, he's a guy who can potentially compete for one of those safety, potentially back up in the slot there for Wendell, but I'm interested to see how they kind of shuffle players around. As I say, Wendell's a lock for the slot. We'll see where he kind of gets shifted if he doesn't go there. But nevertheless, I need to see how this will work out by the end of camp because there's a lot of new pieces. But that's also a good thing. There's depth in that room, but is that depth all translatable to playing time? We'll see. But in terms of some sleeper candidates here in camp to break out for me, some guys to keep an eye on the defensive side of the ball. Give me Eric Brantley Jr. He got nominated for some awards. So I don't know how. I guess that might be an easy pick. I don't know, but nevertheless, I think he's going to be a guy to come off the edge and provide some pressure for FAU this year. I'm interested to kind of see how he works out a role. He didn't play fully off the edge last year, but he seems to be a guy the staff likes and could provide some pressure. He transferred in from Colorado last year, so was a highly touted high school recruit, went to Coach Prime, and now is coming here, or was already here last year, but now could get a big role. That's my defensive pick, with Therese Reed being my backup there in the secondary to potentially win a role. On the offensive side of the ball, I am really high and intrigued on Quincy Brown. He has kind of rebuilt himself. He started his career at TCU, was kind of a 4th, 5th wide receiver on that depth chart. Had some playing time in the year before and the year they went to the college football playoff. Never really established himself there, though. Then opted to go down a level. But now he's back and here at the FBS level, and I think this is a potential big year for him. He's a red zone target. If you go back and look at a lot of his tape, he's a guy who gets open well in the red zone and also can stretch the field. So I'm excited to see how he kind of fits into this offense. And other than that, Kevin, you got any potential sleeper candidates?
Yeah, I'll do one on each side because I don't think we need to go through the entire roster and be like, this guy could be a breakout candidate. Maybe.
But no.
On defense, I've already mentioned his name. I'm going to keep mentioning his name. Jaden Sweeney. I think that guy is going to be a good football player for FAU this year. And I don't know what his role looks like. He's sort of versatile in the sense that he can play a little bit of corner, play a little bit of safety. Those versatile players end up finding roles in these kinds of defenses, especially because you can put them in so many different spots. And so there will be a role for him. I just don't know where. And then on the offensive side of things, I will in fact choose two. So sorry, Robbie, I'm actually lying already. We're only 25 minutes in, and I'm already lying. I'm going to go Jabari Smith. I know he's not really a breakout in the sense that he's a newcomer, but I think he's ready to take that next step at wide receiver. And like we talked about at the beginning of this show, they need someone to step up at wide receiver. And I think it'll be Jabari Smith because I think he showed the flashes last year of an athletic sort of outside wide receiver with good size. And when you're looking at newcomers, right, like I think it's probably easy to gloss over the guy who's been there for about 2 years now, or maybe a year. I think he may have been true freshman last year. But I think he's ready to take that next step. And I think he will emerge as a reliable receiving target. And then I'm going to the tight end room because, that is a brand new list of guys. Reed Mikeska is a very athletic tight end who can play as like an outside slot or like a slot receiver, can line up in line, can do a lot of different things. I think it's hard to teach that kind of athleticism. I think it's hard to teach that kind of upside. I think there's a role for him in this offense. I don't think it'll be as the starter because Collins and Mike Kirk's is like more of a blocking sort of traditional tight end, which they may use. But I think you find a role for a guy like Reed Mikeska in this offense. And I don't know what that looks like in week one. We'll see, later this month. But I think that there's a role for a guy like that in this offense.
We shall see. I'm intrigued to see how the tight ends get used well. Drew, if he was on here, our occasional co-host, he's big into watching the Kitley film. He knows more how they use the tight ends, but it's definitely not how we saw it in the last couple weeks of the season. We're not going to see 3 tight end packages or anything like that, but there's definitely a role for them both in blocking and in pass catching. So that's something to keep an eye on for sure. But you mentioned the schedule. Last thing we'll break down here for you on this this preseason camp episode of Inside the Borough. Obviously, we mentioned it. Starting out week 1 in Maryland, August 30th. It's going to be a hot day, and it'll be all right. I mean, it's Maryland, but nevertheless, a high noon kickoff there from College Park. No national broadcast for that game. It'll be on the Big Ten Network. Nevertheless, it's always good to go out there. And
PTSD on the Big Ten Network. I don't want to have another game on the Big Ten Network. Can we stop?
Yeah. Last year it was that was a tough one to start the season, but I went into that game last year expecting misery, and it wasn't awful, but I think that spoke to a little bit. I think Michigan State was not that good last year. Nevertheless, that game was not to speak to what was going to occur later in the season for FAU, unfortunately. But game 1 of the Kitley era, you're going up to Maryland. You're facing a team that I have not heard a single person on Twitter, nobody. I have heard nobody speak high about Maryland.
Maryland is certainly a football team this year. That's about all I could say.
I feel like Loxley maybe on the hot seat. I don't know how much they care though. It doesn't seem like football is their main concern. They have enough drama going on with basketball and an athletic director search. But nevertheless, this game, I'm not going to go out and by any stretch say this is a winnable game, easy money, whatever. But what I will say is it's not the most difficult Big Ten team in the world, and there's a chance that FAU goes into Maryland and has a competitive football game that gives the fans something to be hopeful about heading into week 2. Whether that's a win or not, I don't know. I'm not going to make these egregious predictions here before even week 2 of camp. I've seen not enough to make that decision yet. But Kevin, what are you looking for here in week 1? Obviously, I don't think you'll make that bold decision, but will you? Are you going to say FAU can pull off that upset?
I don't think that's a bold prediction. I think this Maryland team is, I don't want to say bad, but kind of like FAU, a giant question mark. And I know a lot of people have picked them to finish bottom of the Big Ten or close to the bottom in the Big Ten. And I think we saw last year, right? Like to some degree, FAU gets up for these games. They're never going to lose these games against like middling Big Ten programs by 50 points. They were, in fact, like really close to winning last year. And then there was the Purdue game. I know I'm bringing up PTSD for everyone listening to this. I'm well aware of this. There's the Purdue game a few years back where I don't want to talk anymore about that game. I'm just going to mention that game existed. That game was certainly a game we all watched. But no, I mean, I think that there's a chance they can win this game. I'm not going to sit here and say on August 2nd that they will win this game, but there is certainly a chance that they can win that game. I will say the biggest thing for me, just look good. Just look good out there. I like if you lose by 6 points at the end of the game, right? Maryland is still more talented than you. Anyone who wants to have that debate, man, go find somewhere else to do it, right? Maryland is a more talented football team than you are. The good news is they're not super talented. They're not mega talented. They're just more talented. And so as long as you look competitive, you remain competitive, you don't get run off the field and run out the state of Maryland, right? Like, I think that's a good win. I think that's a good result. I would prefer probably a less mistake-filled game compared to last year, where when they played Michigan State, it felt like every time there was a drive, we were like, yep, there's the next mistake that is going to ruin this drive. And like, as long as you play mistake-free football, look competent, and like keep the game close and show the flashes of what this offense and to some degree this defense can look like on the national or on the big stage, I'm encouraged. Again, this is year one of Zach Kitley's tenure. This is year one of Zach Kitley's time at FAU. No one knows what year one looks like. I know we all have expectations and we want them to look better, but no one knows what year one looks like. And so as long as you're competitive, I think that's a success. And I think that's a good result, all things considered. I would say I think the bigger games come after that. Those next like 3-ish games where you play FAMU, FIU, Memphis. Those are the games where you got to look like a good football team, especially that Memphis game, because Memphis might be near the top of the American Conference this next season. So as long as you look competitive against Maryland and then those next 3 games, that's about as far into the schedule as I'll go. After that, man, good luck. You know what? I don't do the picking game. I don't do they're going to win this many games and these are the games. I don't do that. But those next 3 games, I think, are the more important test of what FAU looks like. I think you need to go beat the brakes off of FAMU because you paid them a lot of money to come here and lose. I think you got to beat FIU because they're your rival and you still have to beat your rival every year. And then Memphis, I think you got to look good against Memphis. That Maryland game, just look competitive. Just look like you belong on that stage. Everything after that, I think, is house money.
Yeah, you mentioned the Michigan State game last year. I feel like anytime the ball was snapped, the Looney Tunes music just started playing, and they just And then
I saw highlights from that game on my Twitter feed a few months ago, and I sat there and watched the entire thing. I was like, maybe the result will change if I watch it a second time. The result did not change when I watched it a second time. It was like they were constantly trying to find the new way to make a mistake. It was so.
I think the coolest thing is Jay-Sean Platt caught a touchdown in that game, and then I opted to redshirt. I thought he caught that touch. I was ready for the Jay-Sean Platt breakout train, but it's okay. It'll happen this year.
I think it was Bugs Brown got that interception, and I sat there and I went, "Oh my God, they're going to win this game! They're going to win this game." The football gods are on their side because I don't know how he caught that. I still don't know how he caught that interception, but I thought he got once he caught that interception, the football gods were on FAU's side, and then. Everything else that happened after that says a different story, is all I will say on that.
Yeah. But you mentioned it. Week 2, FAMU. I hope they bring the band, first of all. I really do. There's no confirmed yes or no on that yet. It's possible, though. It's not a no, so it's possible. And that would be awesome. Their band, if you guys go look it up if you haven't seen it, it's awesome. And then FIU got to go down to Miami, which that stinks. The last time I drove there, I just got stuck in traffic and my tire exploded. But I hope everyone else has better luck getting there this year. And then Memphis at home. I think that's one of the most exciting games on the docket at home this year for FAU. Obviously, the home opener is one thing, but I will see how Memphis does in their first couple of games. But it's very reminiscent of when Tulane came into FAU at the end of the season a couple of years ago, at the end of the Taggart regime, and that was first year of Herman, excuse me, and Tulane obviously won that game, but nevertheless, I think this game has a potential to be like that. Won't go through the entirety of the break down each rest of the game. I will mention them. After that Memphis game, they go to Rice. So, I mean, Rice is going to be an interesting team this year because they're running the option. So it could be just like Army, just like Navy. Scott Abel comes over from Davidson, bringing his option offense to Rice. So that could be annoying. That could be really annoying. You got to go to.
I'm going to get really frustrated with that game. I have a feeling
you have to go to Rice. You're going to play in front of 5,000 people in one. I don't even want to know what that visitor locker room looks like. The press box was scary when I went, but everyone there is really nice. It's like everyone who works in Rice athletics is just like some of the nicest people I've met. So that game, I'm not looking forward to it. I feel like Dewhurst and Kitley are probably already prepping for it. And then they really have to, because if you don't, I mean, what Army did to you last year could happen, and nobody wants to see that. Gosh, between that and the UConn game last year, no.
Those were two of the most miserable weeks I've
No.
ever had watching a football team. I'm just going to be honest.
No. Gosh, no. But after Rice, UAB comes to town. So if realistically, if they can figure out the option, I mean, it's not impossible that FAU gets back to a bowl game. After UAB, they go on the road to USF. Then that's a tough stretch. That's a tough two-dip right there. You got to go on the road to USF, and you got to go on the road to Navy. That two-game stretch right there, to me, is what I'm going to look at this team after that two-game stretch, and I feel like you'll be able to get a sense of what is occurring. Is it a positive season? Is there a lot to look forward to, or do we got to regroup and potentially come back again next year? Because after that two-game stretch, you got Tulsa at home. That's a tune-up game, because then you got to go on the road to Tulane. So this schedule is not easy by any stretch, because after Tulane, you host UConn. That's going to be difficult as well. UConn was good last year, and they brought in more pieces this year. And then you close out the year at home against East Carolina, who under John David Baker, they looked good last year. So they really, in conference play, the only, I guess, easy, and I don't want to say any game in conference play will be easy, but you got UAB at home after going and playing the option at Rice. That's no fun. And then you have Tulsa at home, but that's after a two-game road trip to USF and Navy. So this is a rough schedule, folks. It gets hairy.
It feels like they get like one potentially easy game, and then it's like, whoops, you now have to play two buzzsaws.
It's like, yeah, that's a tough docket for sure. I like their chances of getting to a bowl game, but it's not going to be easy. It's definitely not going to be easy. I'd love to say 6 wins you have to get 6 wins. I used to be that guy, but it's going to be, if they get 6 wins, I will be happy, and I will be saying that there's a positive trajectory for Zach Kitley and the FAU offense. And even if they don't get 6 wins, if they find a way to get 5, I'll still be probably, I would have wanted them to get a bowl, but I'll still probably look at that and say, you know what? Not bad. Let's improve on that next year. Can't have a year 2 like Tom Herman had his year 2. That's no bueno. But 5 to 6 wins this year. I had fingers crossed, but I'm hoping for 6. But it's a difficult schedule. Kevin, any final thoughts on that schedule, on the roster, on anything FAU football before we close this bad boy down?
No, I just want to reiterate, I'm so excited to have football back. This feels so much better than whatever we were doing in the offseason.
I agree. Although transfer portal watching is fun, it gets old, especially when you're not just making additions, you're making subtractions too. No one likes to lose anybody. So I'm excited as well. I'm going to try to get up and out there to Maryland on the 30th. We shall see. Nevertheless, I hope there's a big FAU contingent. I know the alumni with the Bergman family and whatnot, they're planning a big alumni excursion. So if you are an FAU fan, alumni, there is a flight from Fort Lauderdale that can get you out after business hours. It's a 7 p.m. flight, gets you into Maryland the night before. and you could fly out the night after the game. You don't have to do that. You can go and party if you want to, but I know some folks are going to say, oh, I got work and this and that. There's a way to get to Maryland on Spirit. I mean, that's not ideal, but you save some money, and you don't have to miss any work. So no excuses, folks. Get out to Maryland. I'm going to try my best to get out there. I hope to see you all too. Folks, it's great to be back here on Inside the Borough. Stay tuned for more content right here on the YouTube channel and obviously on FAUOwlsNest.com. For Kevin Fielder, I'm Robbie LaStella. We'll see you soon. Stay tuned for more content right here on Inside the Borough and FAU Owl's Nest. Until next time, I'm Robbie LaStella.